You're on. Yeah. How's that going?
Oh, good afternoon. And my name is David Moskowitz, and we're going to be talking about OS2. Then, now, and So, with that in mind, we'll look at Apple, IBM, Microsoft, and DOS. So 1987 stuff, which was a banner year for OS2. Converting applications to OS2, OS2 1X and 2X, Warp 3 and the Internet Access Kit, Windows 95. All right. We started right in Chicago. That's a good thing that this is in Atlanta this year. Warp 4 and Warp Server for e-business Java, and who knows what comes next. So that's what we're going to be doing for roughly the next hour or so. Starting in the 70s, actually. And a couple guys by the name of Alan and Gabe were doing some work with Altair and a company called Altair in a place called Mexico to create basic sort of thing, the popular electronics had on the cover based upon Intel chips and personal computing sort of got started. And nobody expected that they were going to sell as many copies as they did. There was a company called Inside that had a thing that looked like a small mainframe with 50 switches on the front. And Inside had this interesting approach to doing business, and then they had to pay them $5,000 for the right to sell Inside and franchise, and you had to sell $20,000 worth of hardware in a year. If you sold $20,000 in a year, give them the $5,000 and you paid Inside and put even. Along comes two guys named Jobs and Wozniak, and a brilliant guy named Mike Martha, and what they did was radically change the face of the industry because they took money after the stuff was sold as opposed to making more, and the bottom line is that according to Inside, Apple was making a toy and it was going there, and how many people sort of Inside today? And those of you that want to remember personal computing battle, I have a very simple trivia question that very quickly separates the wannabes from them who actually were there, and that is what became of the company called Kentucky Fried Computing that got a case of the you-know-what when the kernel got a case of the you-know-what. And the answer is Kentucky Fried Computing became worse fried computing. You're shaking your head like all of a sudden you do that. Okay. But as I said, that separates the wannabes from them who actually were there, and the same extension. Because if you were 70s, unlike the 60s, if you were a member of the 60s, you weren't there. Literally. Apple proved that this thing could work, and there are two guys. Ever notice how a lot of this was really good stuff in stuff by two guys, right? In Massachusetts, using Applesoft Basic, they created a thing called VisiCalc. Rob Franklin and Dan Bricklin. And they later recompiled it, and instead of it being software art, they called it to a personal computer system, personal software that later became VisiCorp. And of course, VisiCorp was convinced that they got the Inside syndrome and whatever happened to VisiCorp. But the bottom line is that sort of got things on everybody's radar. Because you see, VisiCalc is responsible for selling more apples than apples. And IBM and their infinite wisdom decided that they could create a machine that would also enter this market and do other stuff. And they figured that they'd sell anywhere between 200 and 500,000 of those things over the 5 or 10-year life of the machine. And they took almost $250,000 for the day before it was supposed to be available as computer. Now, if this gives you some idea that there was some brilliant forecasting going on, you'd be right. But why is that important? Because that same issue of forecasting is going to that sort of haunt us as we go through our product. Wozniak created the Wozniak sort of virtual machine. The first thing that was is you're going to get floppy disks connected to the Apple, or small, like today's standards, somewhere around 140K, single-sided, 5.25. And I can remember when working at Apple, probably hoping I could make double-sided disks. And I remember the phone call that somebody would say, I tried it, now the disks don't fit. He said, well, what do you do? I said, well, just make sure I have the notch lined up. IBM followed with a single-sided drive with 160K, and then went to 180K, and then only hope we get a double-sided drive. What kind of that? I didn't have to fold the floppy anymore. That led to also this thing called Microsoft DOS, and actually before the Seattle DOS. And I would love to be in that position of being able to go to you and say, Tom, tell me the thing, I think I have a market for it, but I'm not sure. But because I'm not sure, I'm more than thinking about $100,000. And then I come over here and I say, you know that thing that we want? If you give me $180,000 plus royalties, you can have it. I'd love to be able to do that. Within period. Oh, the first one, God. All right? You don't get up here and do what I'm doing right now without plenty of wisdom. Trust me on that. All right? There was just one problem with DOS, because after Microsoft, we got it, they had to draw a line somewhere, and somebody who shall remain nameless had the infamous comment that said, oh, give them 640K, nobody would use more than that anyway. And then that same company that gentleman was responsible for releases a version of an Office suite that takes about 100 times that with a disk space. In any event, DOS had this interesting limitation, and that is that it could only really do one thing at a time. But while I was writing in my Easy Writer documents, I wanted to be able to look up somebody's phone number or make a quick note. And somebody had noticed this little thing that had somehow gotten slimed into DOS that allowed for terminate but stay resident programs. And with that, anybody want to admit to old enough to remember Sidekick? All right? All of a sudden, I had my phone book, I had a pop-up calculator, and it was all sitting there. And multitasking on the IBM PC Intel platform was born. And then there's this other little company, Lotus Development Corporation. Mitch Kapor tried to sell VistaCorp a couple of modifications that Mitch was responsible for some of the graphics capabilities. And he said, you know, if I take my stuff with VistaGraph and take VistaCalc, and they also had a minimal flat file database, and we combine them and make them work together, then we've got an interesting product. And the gentleman was the head of I'm convinced that the worst phrase that we ever allowed to creep into our lexicon in this industry is you don't understand. And somebody actually wanted to buy a motivational speaker for something that said, no, I don't believe in motivation, I believe in irritation. And that was enough of an irritation for Mitch Kapor to go deal with starting Lotus Development Corporation that, strangely enough, was a spreadsheet, a graphics package, and a sort of a flat database that already existed in VistaCorp, but now got rolled into one product that was fed and worked, and where it is VistaCorp today. Okay. Well, Lotus is still here, but you have to understand that there are some things that were extraordinarily prescient in this industry, like using Lotus as the name of a company. I mean, if you remember the mythology, what was the Lotus plant? That you liquidate and you would forget and get and you have to wonder about those things. Now, I'm going to come back to 1, 2, 3 with an internal, unofficial motto of a company which shall remain able to protect the guilty at this point, but we'll get to it on the next slide. Circa 1983, 1984, IBM released the AT based upon what Bill Gates called the branded 8286 chip. Sort of right, but it worked. And IBM promised their customers that because of all this CSR stuff, and by the way, there was also double loss and rescue as well, let's not forget that. Right? Double loss allowed you to do two things at once, and rescue allowed you to do more. And there's one that's sort of not there because there's sort of an oxymoron in its name. It's something like top view. That was really bottom view. But it worked because everybody used the top view API that IBM, because of their position, was able to make sure were in DOS to deal with this whole thing of context switching. IBM released the AT and promised that there would be an operating system that took advantage of the AT. IBM, unlike some other companies, keeps their promises to their customers. The AT had nothing at all to do with the fact that a few years earlier, they've been involved in a consent decree with the U.S. government, which would have required them to do that to their customers, but the bottom line is that they did. Picked out 1984, paid in 1987. Goldberg and I were at a Windows Developers Conference in Boston of that year, in which Microsoft, under non-disclosure, told us about this thing that was going to be called either Advanced DOS or 286 DOS, that was going to have all sorts of multitasking capabilities. Lo and behold, paid out January, paid in April, and IBM announced with OS2 and with PS2, and because of the Flash 2, the two were inextricably linked, and everybody believed that we needed a PS2 to run OS2. We can talk about the marketing of that part and the branding. Somewhere around the same time, they also released this $3,000 software development kit. We sent a couple people to the developers conferences that they ran, and one of the things that they discovered, because they were talking about this thing that was going to be coming called the presentation manager, and they assumed that everybody had written code for Windows. Notice the underlying assumptions, by the way. They assumed that everybody had written code for Windows, and therefore there would be a problem with this event-driven model, and they had to quickly rush Windows Developers Kit to the conference because nobody was there and control for Windows. May of that year, 1987, Noel and I started the first OS2 user group in Philadelphia. It was part of the Philadelphia Area Computer Society, and in July of that year, we showed OS2 the movie. OS2 the movie was one of the videotapes, a portion of one of the videotapes, where Gordon Lettman, who was one of the chief architects for Microsoft side, and Ed Yakabuchi was his counterpart with IBM. And was working on a book and was talking about the design and the architecture of OS2. And we had, before it was even released, over 100 people crammed into a lecture room at the South University to view OS2, the movie. December, OS2 1.0 hit the street. And now, you have to sort of wonder about what's going to happen to a partnership when one of the partners had a motto that read, DOS ain't done, so Lotus don't run. Trust me, that was not IBM. Okay, we'll come back to this. 1988, I started work on a book called Converting Applications to OS2. I was invited to speak at a conference, the executive briefing on OS2. It was in New York. And it was, now I don't know how many people know anything about New York City, but The weekend before Christmas is a prime shopping weekend, at least in New York City. And Saturday, the Orthodox Jewish community will not come out, and they were a part of the technical community. And you have to give people more than 3 weeks' notice in New York because it's that type of audience in order to make sure that anybody shows up. So if I had reserved on the Saturday, sent out the notices 2 weeks before, planned it on the Saturday before Christmas, and then wondered why nobody showed up except the speakers. So the tagline for that is, suppose they get a war and nobody came. Well, nobody did. One of the people that was there was out in a big conference from IBM, and the organizer of this thing said, well, I'm going to pay you guys. I want to hear your presentation, so you'll at least have an audience of one. So big conference, Chris Janza and I went through our presentation, and Dick came up to me and said, do you do workshops? I said, sure, I've been doing it for years. Teaching adults how to deal with violence and all the people that I said before. I said, okay, that was the last I heard of it. Then in January, not quite, January said, is your book out yet? I said, no, but I have covers. I'm supposed to have covers. And in typical fashion, these kinds of things take longer than they're supposed to be. Have you ever noticed, by the way, that dates on the calendar are always closer than they appear? It was interesting. The cover that I was supposed to have in January finally arrived in March, so I shipped Dick a copy of the cover, and he shipped me a copy of his book with the inscriptions by the book that man, yeah, you should. My book arrived the end of March. I sent him a copy, and in May I got a phone call from Brian Coffin, and said, would you be interested in coming to IBM to go to the public workshop? We're going to do it ourselves, but there's all kinds of stuff that we were talking about. I didn't know who Brian was. I never heard of him. But I think I hesitated maybe 2 microseconds before I said, sure. We got a plane 3 days later. We go to the we put the pilot workshop on in August. In October, we actually started doing the workshop. And what IBM provided was computer software tools, instruction, and lab time. And we worked with anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen developers starting at 8 in the morning to 11 at night to help them migrate and port their code from DOS to OS2, and we later had Windows when the presentation manager was used. So some of the stuff for IBM, where some of the not computer at IBM, they did not do much to help developers get OS2 code. That could have been nice. Because most of the developers that were there completed 40 to 80% of their conversion process during the workshop. The problem was, and I will not reveal the names for technically, some companies had products in the DOS space for $195. They were in one of the workshops, and they needed to finish the conversion process for them, so I knew exactly what the effort was to make sure I was $795 for the OS2 version. And that sort of has a tendency to make people, you know, the difference is, I mean, nothing to do with OS2, but then everything to do with the pricing model and program between $999.99 and $1,000 and 1 cent at cost. Right? It's not 2 cents, it's 18 signatures. Well, the difference between $200 and $800 is the difference between putting on my credit card and having to get my boss to approve it at least one level. So, you know, at the sales I got for their product, and they started saying that I didn't want to do anything to promote OS2. That's sort of like the author that says the publisher didn't do anything to promote my book. You have to understand it, by the way, those people are authors that are thinking about becoming authors, that if you see your book on the shelf, the publisher did their job because the publisher's customers can't go and won't read. You have to do something about making it attractive to the audience and getting it off the shelf. That's your job as the author. And they didn't quite understand that that was their job as the publisher of the software. The price of life so that it was moved. And that was pervasive at that point in time. We spent
also line up with PS2, so being more effective option if you wanted to develop hardware and stuff for it. They had to buy the licensing contract with IBM, just more expensive
Yeah. Everybody heard the question? I'm not sure that there was that type of direct and overt link between the hardware and the software. I think they viewed the OS2 market as a smaller market, and it was mostly a corporate market, they thought, and therefore, because of the corporate market, they charged the price because they thought they could get the price. All right? I really don't believe that there was, well, IBM is charging more so we can type of thing in any of the way that they were proceeding and working. I agree, there is a possibility, but in my dealings with the company, that never ever once came up in conversation. The only thing that did come up was, well, corporate. They can afford it. Hello? Most of the software that the corporate folks are using are developed by developers that don't have pockets that, you can put your hand in and it comes out from here. Most developers pull out dollar bills, $10 bills, not $100 bills. So it didn't make a lot of difference. That was another instance where I was told, you don't understand. We talked about this earlier, and I honestly believe that that's crazy. Stricken from our lexicon. Anyway, the standard, you get OS2 1.1 standard edition to hint that there was something else that was going to be coming because they announced extended edition would follow later. And that included the OS2 presentation manager. 88. I'm sorry, 89. And then we got OS2 1.2 extended edition, and that added stuff like HDFS, or better support for HDFS, database manager, communications manager, and Rex in extended edition. And then we also got a new definition for WAR. Anybody remember installing a printer in OS2 1.2? I think I'd rather go to the dentist and have my teeth pulled. All right? Because what you have to do to install a printer in OS2 can best be described as a painstaking all-day process. It didn't get done because procrastination ruled. You had to find the printer drivers, not always an easy feat to do. Then you had to install the drivers. Then you had to set up a queue for the drivers. Then you had to create the printer object, and once you created the printer object, you had to manually associate it with a driver. You get the idea where this is going? As I said, it was easier to go to the dentist and be drilled than it was to install a printer with OS2, because once you got it installed, it was like it needs this 4-letter word. You had to pray you would be able to print. Because installing the drivers wasn't a guarantee. Printing was interesting. You've heard the term gigolo garbage in, garbage out. That wasn't the problem. It could be out. All right? Then, 1989, October of 1989, we get the beginnings of our rift. Everybody know what I mean by the rift? Right? IBM told some of its partners that there was a growing set of, their word was disagreements, but the way we were told it was clear that there was a little bit more than that, about the direction that these two partners, and I remember, can you do me a favor and just hold this for a second? The way that the IBM said it to us was partners. That was a big hint that there was something really serious going on behind the scenes. Right? November 1989 in Convex, the two partners came around with an agreement in which they agreed that Windows would be the entry-level system and OS2 for the high-end system. And a friend of mine who worked for Microsoft at the time called me in December of that year, and the basic conversation could be summed up as follows. Yeah, right. Now, remember what I said earlier about the motto? Just keep that in the back of your mind. Right? Windows 3.0 hit in May of 1990, and it did in fact generate dollars. However, I'm not convinced, personally, that there was quite as much surprise in that revenue generation as the public stories would have us believe. But as I said, just based upon conversations that I had with some friends who worked for Microsoft both before and after, I'm not totally convinced that they were as surprised as the PR would have indicated. Work on OS 2.0, a 36-bit version of our, right, 36-bit. I actually work on this. A 32-bit version. Now, in fairness, Microsoft had wanted IBM to do a 32-bit version of OS 2 originally. The reason that they didn't, because IBM had made the promise to their customers that there would be something, a multitasking system that supported DAT. And for whatever the reason, whether it's an order, executive order of Thomas Watson, or a government's decree, or just plain ethics, that's what they felt compelled to do. That's why we had the first version of OS 2 running on 286. And everybody agreed that they had to do a 386 version. It is interesting to note that knowing that they were going to do a portable version, let me ask you a question. You're going to do something that's portable, where portable is defined as to a different processor. Would you do it in assembly? I just thought I'd ask because I've gotten other stories about performance. OS 1.3, rumor had it that an early view of OS 1.3 sort of hastens the divorce. Because this was a version of OS 2 that was entirely run by IBM. Right? And it had performance. Good performance. It actually had printer installation, and it worked. But it had something else, too. Because you see, before OS 1.3 was released, Tommy Steele in 1989 had been one of the guests at the workshop that I was running before IBM in West Palm Beach, Florida. And he came up from the development lab. So was Tommy Steele. He owned OS 2 and was the director of the development lab in both of the times. And we were talking to developers about what they wanted, and one of them said to him, why do I have to get extended edition to get Rex? It would be useful for anything. And Tommy said, you guys like it if I gave you Rex in the next edition of OS 2. And every single one of the developers there said, yes, absolutely. He said, all right, I'll do it. One of his aides turned to him and said, Tommy, you can't do that. And his comment, which I still remember, in a somewhat sort of bellowing voice, was, who's going to stop me? I own it. It'll be there. So 1.3 was released, and Tommy Steele kept that promise. 1.3 also had support for Adobe 2-Type as Adobe Type 1 font about the same time that Microsoft and Adobe were having this interesting rift about licensing Type 1 fonts. So Microsoft said, and developed their own font called 2-Type. And we know what happened to Adobe Type 1. Yeah. Pardon? And Microsoft. Microsoft was the first. Microsoft started, originally Apple was using PostScript and Adobe Type 1 fonts. Apple did some work on 2-Type. Well, but it was done under the impetus of Microsoft because of the risk that Adobe. The reason that they started dealing with their own fonts was because they couldn't get what they wanted out of Adobe. Microsoft doesn't, all right. Microsoft doesn't create anything. Well, no, chaos is a different issue. You've heard the story of the biologist, the engineer, and the lawyer who were arguing about God, meaning and life and everything. The biologist said God has to be a biologist because he created life. And the physicist said no, and the engineer said no, God couldn't have been a biologist, he had to be an engineer, because before he could create life, he had to create order out of chaos. And the lawyer turned to his two friends and said, excuse me, you're wrong, God was a lawyer. Yes, who do you think created the chaos? In any event, we also got lazy right for HDFS, and finally support for SGA 1024 by 768. Okay. Now, there's one other thing that sort of occurred with OS2 1.3, and I want to give you that very quickly. In spring of 1989, August first showed a version of PageMaker at Spring Congress, and they later refined it under 1.3 so that it was a fully multitasking, integrated environment. Okay. What multitasking means, and I'll talk about this a little bit, or not multi-threading means, is that what we're looking at is a way of providing extraordinary responsiveness to the end user. That's important because ours did not understand what they had. We did a couple of tests with the Windows version, the Macintosh version, and the OS2 version of PageMaker with a reasonably complex document and people that were adept at PageMaker. And the only problem we had in doing a comparable cross-the-board test in Windows OS2 and the Mac was finding comparable hardware in a Motorola line that matched the Intel line, because it's clearly a different process. But to set up the document in the three environments with 12, 14, and 16 hours respectively. There's 12 hours for the OS2. 14 hours on the Mac, 22 hours for the Windows. And Windows and OS2 are on the exact same hardware. I didn't even recall Brendan after combat in 1989, when I tried to tell him that he had a phenomenal productivity tool, and what he said to me is, oh, magic words, we don't understand, people don't want to use OS2, they want to use a Mac for desktop publishing. And I said, no, you don't understand, the issue with using a Mac to use the reason people are doing desktop publishing is for productivity. So if you can give me something that's going to be more than almost 20% faster, people are going to deal with that, and you've only begun to tap the surface for what's possible in the OS2 arena in terms of performance. And again, I heard the word you don't understand, to which I concluded you didn't. In any event, the disagreement between the partners and IBM finally took over the development of OS2. Microsoft continued and renamed their version to Windows NT. What he said is that it appears that the stuff was added to 1.3 into the disagreement between IBM and Microsoft because, in part, Microsoft wasn't completely ready to accept the fact, for whatever the reason, that IBM was capable of doing that type of tuning performance to the OS2. And some of it may have been because of code that originated in. Let me back up for a minute and give you another example of this type of stuff having nothing to do with OS2. Edmund Chernoff and I were retained by Auerbach and City to try and make their IBM 360 run old, like 20, 25, really small front faster. And they had a source, they had a source license for some of this stuff because of what they did. And then I spent a month and a half pouring through the code, and when they finally found this thing, we just said, no, I can't be that easy. No, I can't be that easy. And we changed it to the language. And it cut the loop down by about 20%. And get here. And we didn't want to wait more than that because we were maybe what actually hurt performance because the loops were there for a reason. And now we're back to saying it's to come back into the end. Now, having gone through that experience with IBM and noticing that Microsoft is learning lessons from IBM, I'm not going to suggest that the folks who read them, yes, I am suggesting the folks, but I can't tell you that they did that because I've never seen the code. But there appears to be a certain degree of disgruntlement with the fact that IBM was able to get this type of performance out of OS2 without Microsoft's help. I understand this whole industry deals with NIH for many years, and how many years off it all? I can understand that my name, well, everybody had invested stuff in it. And because of the disagreement, IBM is wrong and did it on their own. Some of the companies came out with Microsoft, some of the companies did it on their own, and they can come back. Yeah. We made it in Windows NT. That was actually what was going to be OS2 3.0. Well, all right. Actually, what happened is that Microsoft hired IBM and Dave Cobb from DEC to get Windows NT back on track. Right? I knew Dave Cobb was working in General Instrument Corporation. He was one of the architects of DMS, and General Instrument Corporation was on what DEC called the Horizon program. And periodically we would have meetings with DEC, so they would tell us what was over their horizon. And so we had some meetings among others with Dave Cutler and some others so we knew what was occurring. But I still remember the conversations that I had with Cutler after we moved from Boston to Redmond, and he was absolutely furious and upset that I can't do an operating system with these kids. They don't understand operating systems. I'm trying to talk about security and redundancy and fail-safe, and they pretty much the devs and I'm going right over their head. We go back to building it and get BMS developers. It's important to actually build the thing. So that there is a lot about the architecture, the underpinnings of NT that look a lot like BMS. For precisely the same reason that IBM C++ compilers look a lot like the Waterloo compilers, because lo and behold, the developer source was the same set of college graduates. Right? Same basic idea. Right? It didn't come from DEC, but some of the intellectual property thought process that originated in DEC was transplanted to Redmond. What? That was about the concept. Right? Because OS2 2.0 introduced in 92, while Microsoft continued to work on NT version 1 that became 3.5.1 or 3.1. Microsoft is interesting about versions. They take 5 versions to get something right, and they figured if they start counting at 3, that they only have 1.5 to go. And actually started before that. The question was, is it true that they made the decision to break up when IBM went with the workplace shell instead of Windows 3.1? We actually had a Genesis further back than that. It actually started before that because IBM wanted to use graphical APIs based on the GDDM, the graphical data display manager, for the presentation manager. Right? Microsoft wanted to use the Windows APIs under the GDI, or the gosh darn interface. And I'm I'm not making that up. It was actually a more pejorative term that the developers were using, right? And we heard that when I was at the Windows conference in Boston in January of 1987. The string of unprintable characters that came out of people's mouths when I talked about trying to work with the GDI. It's true. And IBM wanted a more robust environment than was available with the GDI, so they used the GDM stuff to try and get there. Right? So that lift actually started before the workplace shift. Now, there's one slight difference. IBM understands object-oriented development. Right? I'm not sure that I can make the same claim about folks at Microsoft because their version of inheritance they call aggregation. And a friend of mine at Intel said that saying that aggregation is the same thing as inheritance would be analogous to us saying that because it has a divide by zero error, that the best thing for us to do is take out the divide instruction because after all you can get the same thing with successive subtraction. You still get the same answer, it's just not as easy to do. And that's his view of Microsoft aggregation in place of inheritance, because inheritance doesn't take. Okay. Yeah.
Where does land manager fit into this concept?
I'm getting there. Okay. There's land manager and land server.
Right.
All right. And that was the two different networking approaches. Land manager was Microsoft, land server was IBM. Right. And that started roughly in the 1.1, 1.2 time frame. Right. Because the database manager that was part of Extended Edition, 1.2 Extended Edition, was a mini stripped-down version of DB2 that was extraordinarily powerful. And as you attach that to land manager or land server to a back-end DB2 somewhere, there wasn't a whole lot you couldn't do at that point in time. It was extraordinarily powerful. And then when you combine that with the syndications capability so that you didn't have a network and you wanted to get SNA stuff, SNA stuff, that was built into the syndication center. Right? So land server land manager started about that time frame. Now, OS 2.0 was almost 32-bit. And it had this other thing, a virtual DOS machine, capitalizing on that capability of the 386, as opposed to the DOS box, aka 70 box. And we also had the workplace shell that was written with SOM, or System Object Model, and C, not C++. Because while C++ had been released in 1986 or thereabouts, it really wasn't yet in vogue. It took Merlin to release an extraordinarily cheap C++ compiler before it really took off, and that was somewhere around, I think they announced it at software development, 93, 94, between Khan and everybody else, and all the other good clouds, the crowd was getting the room downstairs, and I recall the Santa Clara Convention Center. Anybody there that can check my nerves? I think that's the way.
Some year after the release of all the
right. All right. It was 93, 94, because I remember that one. All right. Thank you, Peter. OS 2.1, 1993. And the other thing is the same about the same time. OS 2.1 Unleashed. That was an interesting project because we were originally going to ship the book before IBM shipped, and we got permission from IBM to do that. And then they changed part of what was in 2.1 and pushed the date out, and we couldn't quite release it as soon as we wanted to because too much changed. But we had to issue corrections anyway, but we still managed to. We came out in like March or April, and they finally released in May. And 2.1 had some interesting stuff. 3.0, Windows 3.0 Windows 2 code. Now this was after Microsoft had shipped 3.1. NPM with a multimedia presentation manager too. And ta-da! PC MCIA support. You guys want to guess what that's what it is? You don't want to get the PC card because I remember what this was. Like considering an acronym or created an acronym, yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, so thank you. 2001 report followed later. They originally did not have a copy of Windows. And when I showed this, there was a guy there named Darren Clay, who demonstrated Windows 3001 running in OS 2. Darren is still listed by IBM and OS 2 committee because he is the one who did OS 2 stuff for you. The one that makes big numbers for it, where people say that they did. Because they have something better to do. Or supposed to be the case. Darren's idea.
Even one didn't want it. Yeah,
but one of the things that IBM also did was build into OS 2 protected from everything. Because the PI stuff was now totally different, just in case anybody needs confirmation of that. And then we get Warp 3 and the Internet Access Data and Windows 95. Warp 3 was released in October of 1994. That was 94. And it included TCP/IP primarily for dial-up. Now, straight out release, they in the summer of 1984 when they had the IDK in testing. And one of the things that became extraordinarily clear, now remember Mosaic and others had hit the streets in 92, 93. 94 was a huge year for the web. So that's when it finally began to take off, people began to notice. And IBM, Netscape, one of the browsers was out, it was better than Mosaic, and Web Explorer was better than Netscape. Because it was better. The problem is IBM did not clear the current infrastructure support. There was a market research firm in Philadelphia that felt that they had me a favor because I saved them about $150 million the previous year. And part of what they did was commission a study of possibilities, marketing possibilities for what with the Internet Access Data. And they did a study in they focused on the study in Florida, Ohio, and St. Louis, Missouri, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. And they had over 800 hours of video. So this is not a small project. It is a real honest market research project, if you know what I understand. Because the president of my happening having lunch and I have to ask him about it. I gave IBM the summary information, and they wanted the whole report because we would give it to the like 15. But the basic summary was that IBM would release an OEM version of Warp 3 with a sticker campaign that said, Internet ready out of the box. That the probability was that OS2/IBM was doing a run rate of over 1 million units a month. That in absence of that campaign, that the run rate would be probably at best half that. I discovered earlier this year from sources that I consider to be reasonably reliable, but I've got to use appropriate weasel words because I was not there, I don't know. While people that gave me the information that I'm about to pass on to work for IBM, and I believe we're in a position to know, there's no way that I can go back and verify. Part of what they told me is that one of the reasons why that campaign was mixed was because the PC company didn't want competition. All right? Coming from the folks that said that nobody wanted OS2 in the first place, so why not let OEMs preload it to deal with the sticker campaign? And they're mixing it and modernizing it to occur because they didn't want competition, but they weren't shipping OS2 or we weren't promoting OS2 to the field anyway. And hello, anybody home? Is there something wrong with this picture or is it me? They said, I can't verify it. But as I said, I believe it's from sources that I consider to be reliable. Right? Work3 solved a whole lot of device problems and a vastly improved workplace shell and printing worked. And it worked reasonably seamlessly. You could actually do a print screen. What a concept. And you could print the screen of a graphical window or the whole screen, depending on where the mouse was. The mouse was in the middle, you got the window. The mouse wasn't in the middle, you got the whole screen. And it worked. Still can't do better than it is. Yeah, open up paintbrush, take it in the paintbrush, and hope the paintbrush prints and you don't get the SOD. The ISA included dial-up support. In 1995, we got Work Connect with networking built in. And TCP/IP was one of the protocols we shipped with it, and we also had the interesting little bit of confusion about red box and blue box. With and without Windows. So there was OS2 for Windows and OS2 with Windows, and that came either a red box or blue box, depending upon whether or not you had networking at the dial-up level with the IAK, or you had it at the network level, and that's everything except the dial-up, and the separate kit was just installed automatically. That's called kind of saying, what are our distinction? Then we get 1996 was server that merged Warp3 and LAN server 4.0. Right? So now you have the convergence of the two, and there was a natural outgrowth there that they did Work Connect. Right? There were monitoring improvements, and one of the big ones was this one. The ability to print PostScript files on non-PostScript printers. You know how many HP LaserJet 2s were still in use in 1996? Everyone ever made. I had a LaserJet 3 about that time, and I was thinking about, replacing it maybe at some point after it broke, and I had a HP guy come out and do some service on it. I read that thing, and it took me 20 minutes to stop laughing. And I said, why are you laughing? He said, well, look, I got 35,000 papers to this, and the 3s that every day is rock solid as the 2s, and I just turned the 2 where the counter rolled over. Okay, the ability to print PostScript files on a non-PostScript printer. Now, HP had this cartridge. Because they were the 2 or the 3. But forget how much it cost. The problem was that the cartridge was a layer of emulation. And you needed to add memory to the 3 to make it work. And you also needed infinite amounts of time to get any type of complex document out. Because it wasn't the fastest implementation. I remember printing a document that took 2.5 hours to render. And then I printed that same document with Warp server. And it took about 20 minutes for the computer to convert it, and it printed directly. I said, use this. This is good. This is a reasonable Warp server on the desktop. Forget about turning it into a server. We had clients that were using it as a desktop system just to get this capability. And then Merlin totally re-engineered workplace shell. Now, instead of the internet type stuff being another object. It was actually integrated, and the workplace shell was internet aware. Work 4 was also universal client. See, in that time, in 1996, there were other networks besides Nobel and Microsoft and IBM. There was Fantastic. Anybody remember this? And Warpstock, and half a dozen different networks. And you could use Work 4 as a client to anything. And it also has the ability to dial in. So Microsoft houses RAS, remote access support, called LAN distance, that was bundled in with modem. And it also has management capabilities that started in system view and was later renamed to TNE10 Nexinity when IBM acquired Tivoli. And then there was the hardware vendor that changed the BIOS. So it wouldn't run on it. In part because of supposed, well, the exact way that they told me was, we had to make changes to our BIOS. Oh, you're supporting new hardware? I said, no, it's sort of new software. I said, well, what's sort of new software about it? He said, well, one of our suppliers has given us patches. Okay, why are you telling me this? He said, well, we had this contract with you about dealing with OS2 devices, and we're going to have to terminate the contract. Well, I don't understand why BIOS changes require to terminate the contract. We can still talk about doing OS2 devices. And they said, well, no, because that's what the BIOS changes affect. Okay, I thought I was reasonably bright. Would you mind spelling it out for me? We have a partner, and we sort of said, we have a partner with a kind of pause there that has insisted that we make BIOS changes to accommodate their software, and that's going to preclude running OS2. And I think I paused for a few seconds, and I said, we've got a partner to be Microsoft. They said, well, non-disclosure prevents us from revealing. And I said, non-disclosure, we've got one too. I mean, we're covered by those things. Because well, it's also in the contract. Okay? So you're telling me that our contract was terminated. When? Now. Oh. Don't ask the name of the vendor, I still can't tell you what that type of stuff did happen. They put that together with what was going on with the PC company. With all due respect, there's a whole lot of stuff that's laying in the press for the quote death of OS2. Anybody remember the deck rainbow? Right? The deck rainbow had an interesting property. You can only get formatted disks from deck because they forgot to include format utility in the, right? We used to wonder when I worked for Generation Corporation how DEC could do the following. Gun, foot, duct tape, pull trigger, and ask faithful question, why didn't I miss? Much of the responsibility for the death, as it were, of OS2 did not unfortunately lie with the press. They didn't manufacture those. They reported that they were here. And they get 3 or 4 different stories out of 3 or 4 different IBMers, and none of them were consistent. Well, if they're consistent, going to back something, they're viewing what was going on. Was it Microsoft had a consistent reason why IBM didn't? They were right. And one at the same time, IBM was saying that NT is not there. In fact, the gentleman was wearing this T-shirt that IBM had sent. That IBM shirt or this is one of the others?
This is one I wore at combat.
All right. IBM had the shirts there, NT on them, and that's not there. A nice try. And at the same time, there were software folks inside IBM that were telling the press that they were looking at the possibility of converting some of their software to NT. And so, can we talk about consistency here? Right? Work server for e-business, we get the JFS, the journaling file system. Big time performance enhancement. Big time. About 2,000 threads, easily. You want 2,000 followers support to it. Work server for e-business support. When e-commerce, build in. When Java services, build in. Web server, what is common for web server? Web server, built in. And tremendous performance improvements in the file system and other areas. Would I like to see a client-based partner? Yes. But realistically, is IBM going to do it? There's nobody left. And let's be honest now. Whether you use an R&D to turn out clients, needs to last. You need to develop it. I understand. The other thing we get to work server for e-business is tools in Java. A lot of the setup tools for work server for e-business are written in to require the Java student. And speaking of Java, we get Java is pre-installed with the operating system, OS2, going back to the Web 3.4 days. Netscape 2.02 with Warp 4 didn't use the native version of the Java virtual machine, whereas every other version of Java didn't ship with the OS, but shipped with the browser. So it was up to the browser to implement it. And now all of a sudden I had Java at the operating system level, not quite as seamlessly as I would have liked. What I would have liked to have seen is invoke a class file the same way you invoke an executable file and automatically start the JVM. Right? And there were a bunch of us who tried to tell IBM that that's what they want to do, and we heard the what you don't understand. It's gotten to the point where I can tell the context as soon as I hear the spot word. Right? That's one of my least favorite words. But IBM has worked significantly to improve the performance of Java. So that in many cases, what some companies are doing is using IBM's virtual machine in a Windows environment or an OS2 environment. You also have TCP/IP 4.1 that requires Java just to install the thing. And the latest version, 1.1.8, is better than almost any other version of 1.1. And you have Java tools, as we said earlier, one server for e-business. So OS2 isn't game. But the reality is it's been on some form of life support for about 12 years. Neither IBM nor Microsoft really understood the data use. And Microsoft still doesn't get it in M2. It's a developer model that they're still suggesting. Didn't make any sense at the time. Why do I say that they didn't understand it? Because of this whole thing called multi-threaded system. The purpose for thread, it has a single purpose, and it's not to overlap operations. It's to provide extraordinarily responsive applications to the end user. It's an end user improvement issue, not an overlap of operations. Now, in some cases the end user is a person. Some cases it's another system sitting out there. But that's the purpose for thread. And anybody that doubts that that's the case, go get Charles Petzold's book on PM programming, where he's quoting the Microsoft model and the IBM model, and he talks about a delay loop for long computational tasks. Never should have been done this. Charles went out on a panel and literally at opposite ends, both figuratively and literally, about what's the purpose for transport. And he was saying you use them if you want them, and you don't have to because they got these other things that Microsoft put into Windows so that you could do things asynchronously with messages because they didn't understand threads. Okay. OS2 uptime gets to be interesting too. Survey of our clients, average OS2 uptime 9.5 months. Solaris, which by the way is the largest selling server that we've seen, runs about 9 months, Linux about 6, NT about 3. But how better? What? No, I'm not being generous. That's about what it is that we see. Right? And these weren't made up numbers. The key thing to understand, I don't care how good the technology is, technology does not sell. Right? The object is not to build a better mousetrap. The object is really to solve a problem, which means the object, as I said, isn't to build a better mousetrap, it's to make the money less visible. Think about that. Technology doesn't sell. What does is a solution to a problem. IBM taught the industry a lesson a long time ago that they sort of forgot what OS2 and that is adequate is sufficient, everything else is irrelevant. IBM tried to sell technology, they weren't selling the features and benefits of OS2. And the features and benefits that Microsoft was selling were with NT. Future. Always in motion is the future, and you live. IBM has promised that OS2 would last at least till 2004, another 5 years. I believe that that's probably the case. I would not look for OS2 on the retail channel. In fact, if you want my estimate of the efficient death of OS2 would be 1997. IBM announced that they were no longer going to have OS2 on the retail channel because the old cliche, out of sight, out of mind, definitely works. One interesting sideline. 1987, Gordon Lettman wrote a book called Inside OS2, in which he said OS2 was intended to last for 10 years. Is it a coincidence that it was 1997, almost 10 years to the day after Inside OS2 was originally published and released, that IBM announced that they were pulling OS2 out of the retail channel? What's an update? Question. If anybody wants more information, you can reach me here. Yes. We started to put the floor plan of books together, and the publisher decided they wanted to get it out fast, and I was insisting that it had to be at the same quality level, and my name was going to be on the cover of the book, but I was not going to let it go out in 2 weeks just because they wanted to get it out quickly. And so they got a couple of authors that they paid to get stuff done, and they showed me the stuff. There were a lot of words on the page. But anybody who worked on any of those projects with me understood that I was sort of a gentle but harsh aspect because I insisted that every single author answer the following question with their manuscript. A, did you fully explain the material? B, did you do it in a way that didn't disenfranchise the novelist nor talk down to the expert? And what I got from the stuff that Sam paid for was happening. There were 60 pages of drill. So I wouldn't have given them a kid. And it didn't answer those critical questions. And that's what they wanted to go ahead and do. And then we became the villain because we were dragging our feet. they finally notified us somewhere May, June of 1997, that they went ahead and published a book, and that's why the 266-day clock. So the right to reverse to us, but the IBM announced that we couldn't do anything about it legally, so after that clock expired, but in that time frame, IBM announced that they were no longer going to support the right to the retail channel. And with that occurred, trying to find a publisher for that book was tough. We thought we might have an opportunity to do that last January when I posted the message on Warpstock that they were looking for authors and content. And we couldn't put a team together to have it cover the subject matter. To do it, not to one person.
So are you looking for volunteers?
At this point, I really don't think that, as much as I'd like to do the book, I need to be mercenary about this, I'm not interested as a volunteer. I told the publisher that the first version was only 200 weeks, so 100,000 copies, and I could hear him pull out of his chair laughing. He said, "You don't understand, operating system books don't sell that many copies." I said, "Well, you don't understand, you know what I'm going to do is promote the book," and said, "It's not going to make any difference if it's an operating system book and decide it's not going to do anything, particularly the negative about this." And the first edition of that book sold 122,000 copies. Also, there's 750,000 copies that I know about, but I don't know about some of the translated versions because the company bought the rights for it, and all we got was royalties for the rights, but not per copy royalties, so I don't know what they are. But today, I couldn't afford to devote the time to get that book out in a timely fashion, because the effort required to deal with it is roughly 4 to 6 months, and Peter can say it's right there. Writing a book easy?
You're never going to be one of small fees.
Okay. And you were writing about what, Java? Right. So Peter's a professional writer. And he gets paid as a wordsmith and just puts stuff on paper. The people that we use for the Unleashed project were writing to record what they knew. They weren't professional writers, which means that the production schedule was part-time and longer. So we're looking at 4 months, and that's 4 months of doing nothing but. Because if you do it part-time or spare time, like how long does it take to write a license? And if you're really dedicated, you can do it again 2 quarters an hour, but if you're only going to spend 1 or 2 minutes a day, once or twice a week, it's likely to take significantly longer. And if you're writing about technology, you can't do it that way because the big changes before you get the manuscript done. So, with all due respect, unless we can find a way to get it done with the right set of people and do it reasonably quickly, with the right market, I don't really think we know what that's going to be.
Well, meanwhile, I see that the owner needs to better understand the operating system.
I absolutely agree. One of the best ways is places here, make contact with people that are here, network, look at the OS2 news group, the OS2 central area, computer area. There's also a vibrant area on AOL that supports and provides help for OS2. User groups around the country do a very good job, and they do a better job servicing what has become a smaller market than we can do with the goal. As much as I like to do it, the practical reality is that if I were single, younger, and didn't have a family to support, that would be an easier thing to say, I'll do it with authority from them. Right? But you get things like mortgage payments, car payments, and daughters. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.
Okay, we'll be setting up the roundtable discussion promptly at 2:30.